everybody. Today we're going to be hitting the slopes. Not those kind of slopes, the geometrical slopes. We're going to be talking about the slopes of lines.
This sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
The ratio of the vertical change, which we're going to call the rise, to the horizontal change, we're going to call that the run, between any 2 points on the line. So, and it can be any 2 points, okay? So for example, if I look at this line given here, we just picked two random points. I picked those two, and then I'm going to count the rise and the run. Okay, now if you have a graph, I recommend that you just count the spaces. However many spaces you have, or how many spaces it goes up, it's going to be the rise, and however many spaces it goes to the right, it's going to be your run. Okay, but if you don't have a graph, then you can use the actual points given. Okay, remember that every point has an x and a y, and the first point will be called x1, y1, and the second point will be called x2, y2. Okay, we're going to be using the letter M for slope, so anytime you see the letter M, it's going to represent slope. And remember again, once again, the slope is going to be the rise over the run. Okay, and the formula to find the slope, if you're given 2 points, it's going to be subtract the y's divided by subtract the x's. And that's basically how you find the slope. One thing to note is that a positive slope, if something has a positive slope, then the line is going to be going upwards from left to right. Okay, you read a graph the same way you read a book. You always go from left to right. Okay, when you're reading this these words here, you're going from left to right, and you're going to read a graph the same way. Okay, so when I draw a line like that, you're going to read it starting from over here, and then you're going to end up over here on the right side. Okay, but we go from left to right, and the reason it's called a positive slope is because if you were to get any 2 points on the line, okay, going upward is positive number, and going to the right is going to be a positive number. So when I do my rise divided by my run, it's going to be a positive number divided by a positive number, and a positive divided by a positive will give you another positive number. Okay, that's why the slope is positive. A negative slope is backwards. So if a line has a negative slope, then the line will be going downwards from left to right. Okay? And the reason it's called a negative slope is because when you get any line going downwards from left to right, because when you're going down, that will give you a negative number, and then I'm going to the right, that would give me a positive number. And so when you do a negative number divided by a positive number, then you get a negative number, and that's why your slope is negative when it goes down. So let's do an example. It says find the slope of the line that passes through the following points. So I'm going to do it two ways. I'm going to do it with the actual formula, and then I'll do it using the graph. Okay. Now once again, if you're giving points like this, then you have to use the formula, and if you're giving the graph, then it's a lot easier to graph the points on a graph. And so once again, the formula says we're going to subtract the y's, and then on the top and the bottom we're going to subtract the x's. Okay? And I call this x and y, and x and y. So we're going to subtract the y's. We're going to do 4 minus negative 1. So 4 minus negative 1. A lot of times people make a mistake because they see this negative sign here and they think that they don't have to put it again. Okay? But remember that minus is part of the formula, and this negative is part of our x value. And then on the bottom we're going to subtract the x's. It's going to be 4, and then minus the other x will be 2. And on the top, 4, and then double negative becomes a positive. On the bottom, 4 minus 2 is just 2. And if I simplify the top, 4 plus 1 is going to give you 5. So the slope is 5 over 2, and it is positive. That means our line has to go up from left to right. Okay? Now I can show you here if I graph those points. 2, negative 1 would be 2 to the right, 1 down. and 4, 4 would be 4 to the right and 4 up. Okay? And if I draw a line going through those points like that, then I can also count my rise. I can go up. Well, how much does it go up? It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can go 1, 2 to the right, and my rise and my run is 5 over 2. For letter B, we're given 3 points. And it doesn't matter, the formula says that you just have to pick 2 points. I can give you 100 points, and you just have to pick 2 points, okay? So I'm gonna pick the one that looks easiest here. I know 0 is an easy number to work with, and it doesn't really matter which one of these you pick. So I'm gonna pick this point here, and I'm gonna pick that point there. You can cross this out, but if you try with any 2 points, you're always gonna get the same slope. And so remember that this is your x and this is your y, this is your x and this is your y, and the formula says we're going to subtract the y's on top, and then we're going to divide it by and then subtract the x's on the bottom. Okay, so if I subtract the y's, it's going to be negative 7 minus negative 5, and the bottom it's going to be 0 minus negative 1 will be your x's. And this, once again, this double negative here becomes a positive, so I'm going to rewrite that as negative 7 plus 5. On the bottom, same thing here, negative negative becomes a positive. And if I do my math, negative 7 plus 5 is going to be negative 2, and then 0 plus 1 is 1. And if I simplify that fraction, negative 2 divided by 1 is a negative 2. So that's the slope of the second line. Okay. Now we'll graph all points for you so you can see what's going to happen here, but if I graph negative 2, negative 3, right there. If I graph negative 1, negative 5, negative 1, negative 5 is right there. And if I graph 0, negative 7, it's right there. And if I draw my line through it, like so, you can count the slope as well. It's going down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, which is basically negative 2 over 1, and simplifies to negative 2. Some people like to leave the slope as a fraction, but most people like to put it simplified. Now let's talk about 2 special lines. The slope of a horizontal line is always going to be 0. Okay? And let me give you an example or why they're all going to be 0. Okay? If you have any horizontal line, remember, how do I find slope? You pick any 2 points. It doesn't matter if I pick this one and that one. And if I count the rise, how much does it go up? Well, it doesn't go up. So my rise is 0. Okay? And how much does it go to the right? Well, from here to here, it goes 4 to the right. And 0 divided by 4 is going to be 0. Okay? It doesn't matter if I pick any other 2 points. If I do that, the rise from these 2 is 0. And the run, it goes to the right one. But 0 divided by 1 is still 0. And if you pick any 2 points, it's always going to be 0 over a number. And 0 divided by a number is always going to be 0. Okay? That's the reason why the slope of any horizontal line is 0. Now the slope of any vertical line is always going to be undefined. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this right now, but the slope of any line that's going up and down will always be undefined. Let's find out why it's undefined. Okay, so if I take this vertical line here and I do the same exact thing and I pick any 2 points, for example that one and that one, and so what's my rise? Well, my rise is 1, 2, 3, 4. And what's my run? Well, it doesn't go to the right or to the left. That way so therefore it's going to be 0. Okay, but 4 divided by 0, you might be thinking it's 0. It's not. Okay, if you plug in this in the calculator, you're going to get an error, or it might tell you undefined, and depends on the calculator. But any number divided by 0, it's always undefined. And if you pick any other 2 points, for example those 2, the rise is negative 2 or positive 2. It depends if you go up or down. And then you go 0 to the right, and negative 2 divided by 0, or even positive 2 divided by 0 is going to be undefined. Now that we know about slope, one thing we know about parallel lines are going in the same direction, then they're going to have the same slope. Okay? And that's what this thing says, that all parallel lines have the same slope. And so if the slope of line 1 is A over B, then the slope of line 2 is also going to be A over B. Okay, so the slopes of perpendicular lines. Remember, perpendicular means 2 lines that cross and they make a right angle. Okay? So you notice that one is going up, has a positive slope. the other one is going down very fast. It has a negative slope. And so they're not going to be the same, but they're going to be negative reciprocal slopes. Okay, and a negative reciprocal, if you forget what it was, you should have learned it a while back. But negative reciprocal is when you flip the fraction. So if I have a over b, then I gotta flip it into b over a. And the negative part is gonna be the opposite sign. So it goes from a positive to a negative, okay? And I'm gonna let Missy Elliott explain to you how to get the negative reciprocal.
Is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. It's your primitive, it's why I need number. It's your primitive, it's why I need number. If you got is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. It's your primitive, it's why I need number. It's your primitive, it's why I need number.
So if the slope of the first one is a over b, then the negative reciprocal would be negative b over a. Once again, you're going to flip it from a over b to b over a, and then you're going to change the positive to a negative. And if the first one's negative, then the second one has to be positive. Okay. Okay. Let's do some examples just to drive it home. Okay. For example, if the original slope is positive 3 over 2, then what we're going to do is we're going to flip it around and change it to a negative 2 over 3. Okay, and now if our slope is negative 5 over 4, so once again, we're going to flip it and reverse it. And we're going to get 4 over 5. Okay. And if our slope is 0, okay, now this is the one you cannot flip, but if the slope is 0, that means it's going to be going horizontal. And a horizontal line is always perpendicular to a vertical line, and the slope is going to be undefined, and that's going to be a vertical line. Any horizontal line is always perpendicular to a vertical line. All right, for example number 2, it says, tell whether the lines passing through the following points are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Okay. So remember, if this line passes through these 2 points, and this line passes through the 2 points, they're going to be parallel. If the same slopes, they're gonna be parallel if they have the same slope, perpendicular if they have negative reciprocal slopes, and their slopes are neither of those, then they're not gonna be neither parallel or perpendicular. Okay? So what we have to do is we have to find the slopes of both lines. And so if I find the slope of line 1, once again, how do I find the slope? We're gonna subtract the y's, negative 1 minus the y4. On the bottom, we're gonna subtract the x's. X is 5 here, minus 0. And then if I do my math here on the top, negative 1 minus 4 is a negative 5. And 5 minus 0 is 5. And if I simplify, this becomes a negative 1. And I'm going to write it as a fraction. I'm going to put it negative 1 over 1. And that's the slope of line 1. Now if the slope of line 2 is the same, then it's parallel. And if I flip it and get positive 1, then it's going to be perpendicular. Okay, so let's do this once again. The slope, I'm going to subtract the y's. In this case, it's going to be 3 minus 6. On the bottom, I'm going to subtract the x's. It's going to be 0 minus and then negative 3. And then 3 minus 6 on top is going to be negative 3. And then this double negative is going to become a positive 3. And 0 plus 3 is a 3. Okay? And if I simplify it, negative 3 over 3, it's going to be negative 1. Which I can also once again write it over 1. It's going to be the same exact slope. So we know that for line A, these 2 lines are going to be parallel. For B, same exact thing. Let's go ahead and find the slope for the line 1. And once again, we're going to subtract the y's. It's going to be 3 minus 5. On the bottom, we're going to subtract the x's. 5 minus 2. And do the math. 3 minus 5 is a negative 2. On the bottom, 5 minus 2 is a positive 3. And then that's already simplified. For the second line, same exact thing. I'm going to subtract the y's on top, and I'm going to subtract the x's. 6 minus 0 on the top. On the bottom, 7 minus 3. And if I simplify on the top, 6 minus 0 is 6. On the bottom, 7 minus 3 is 4. And if I simplify 6 divided by 4, they're both divisible by 2. And so 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 4 divided by 2 is 2, and it becomes 3/2. Now notice that this is flipped from 2/3 becomes 3/2, and they're both negatives of each other, negative and a positive. Those are what we call negative reciprocals, and therefore they are going to be perpendicular. Perpendicular. Alright, for example 3, it says graph a line that passes through point P and is parallel to the given line. Okay, once again, what do we know about parallel lines? They have the same slope. So if I know the slope of line AB, which goes up 2/3, that slope is right here, slope is 2/3. Then I know my other line has to have the same slope, but it has to pass through this point P. So if I go up 2, and 1, 2, 3 to the right, up 2 and 3 to the right, then this line will be parallel to that one. Okay? And I can just do the same thing for the next two. Okay, so let's try to do them quickly here. So same thing for the second part here. What's my slope? Okay, I'm gonna write it down up here. My slope is goes down 2 and over 2. That is negative 2/2 because it's going down. It's got to be negative slope. Okay, so therefore this one is gonna have the same slope. It's got to pass through point P. If I go down 1, 2, and then over 2, then my point is going to pass through, or my line's going to pass through that point as well. Excuse this horrible line, it's kind of crooked, but those are going to be parallel. In fact, let's go back here. We can signify these are parallel with these little arrows, or sometimes you might see a little triangle like that, or kind of like an arrow. So those are parallel. These two are parallel. And I can do the last one here. What's my slope here? Well, from here to here, it goes up 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. And if I go up here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, you notice it's going to be off the graph. Okay, so let's go backwards. Instead of going up 2 and right 4, let's go down 2 and left 4 to get the point on the left. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. There's my point, and there's my line. We can say this third line is parallel to this third line. Okay? Alright, and then example 4, it says graph a line that passes through point P, but this time it's perpendicular to this given line. Okay? And if you notice, we have the same exact lines. Okay? Now we had said earlier that the slope of this line here goes up 2 and over 3. That's positive 2/3 because it's going upwards. And so the slope of a perpendicular line has to be a negative reciprocal. So once again, I'm going to flip it and reverse it. And then after that, I'm going to graph the other line.
This sucks more than anything that I've
with a
ever
slope
sucked
of negative
before.
3/2. So negative means it goes down. I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and then over 2. And there's my point. And if I draw a line going through this point like that, these two will be perpendicular. They make a right angle. For the second example, once again, we had said the slope of this line was negative 2/2. So my new slope, if I get the negative reciprocal, I'm going to flip it around positive 2/2. That means it's going to go up 2 and over to the right 2. So if I go up 2 and over to the right 2, I'm going to get right there. Okay, and then I get that line right there. Once again, these are perpendicular. They make a right angle, a 90-degree angle. We had said the slope was up 2 and over 4, 2/4. And so if I get the negative reciprocal, it's going to be negative 4/2. And so it's going to go down 4 and over to the right 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and over to the right 2 will land right there. Okay? And those two lines are going to be perpendicular.